All right, welcome everybody to KC Happy Hour. We are happy to be back. It's not the new year yet. We're just a few days away from 2022. We missed you guys last week. We were obviously off for the holiday break, but we are so happy to be back here this week. And like I mentioned here on the caption for this show, we have kicked out and fired everybody. Well, except for Kyle. I need Kyle behind the scenes, our producer. No, but seriously, we gave our main guys a week off. We wanted to do driver evaluations, which means we can't have the drivers evaluate themselves. We need some outside guys. So I brought in some former superstars who still definitely, I believe, could get behind the wheel and go toe-to-toe with any of our head superstars that we push. Join us, a couple good friends of the show here. So we'll bring them on in. First of all, we got GFC Karting, Sonny Cervelli. He'll be joining us on the show here tonight, coming from his home over in Northern California. Luke Selliken is here, who just barely got his setup in. He's actually on vacation. Big thanks to Luke from Rolison Performance Group. And, of course, another RPG mainstay, Artie Carpenter, is here as well. And so all three of these guys have raced a good number, actually, in the most recent decade and half decade, really. Some of the guys that we'll be talking about here tonight. They'll also be able to give you a bit of an insight of what the racing was like both before, during, and, of course, now we might be after the pushback bumper period, which we're going to get to because there was so much news that came out over the last just week and a half while we were gone. And again, a lot to touch on from it all. First and foremost, of course, we knew that AMR Motorplex was going to be adding the grass. In fact, on our show, actually, last time we were live, we gave you guys an onboard that showed you it. Right before we went off the air for that, or actually right before we came back with our show here tonight, in this gap, there was the Sunshine State Karting Challenge event down in Miami at the racetrack. That was the first major event they had, over 160 entries. I was down there because I'm the series organizer, I guess you could say, for the SSKC. I help Eric Jones manage that. It's his own series, but I go down there and I'll work for him each weekend. So I got a first-hand look at what every bit of the ways that the runoff could get used. And so right off the bat, we saw everything that weekend. And they'd already seen a lot of it because of practice. Of how the grass was getting kind of chewed a little bit, especially because it only had about a week and a half for it to really set in from when they put that sod in. They ripped up over 6 truckloads of pavement, a ton of pavement. Doesn't seem like it'd be a lot for just a 40-feet stand of about maybe 10 feet wide around the racetrack, which we had that map posted up a little bit. But there was a ton of asphalt ripped up in a huge operation with AMR Motorplex and with Homestead Miami Speedway. So with that, they ended up obviously putting flat curbs in. They moved the curbs to CIK level on the inside, so they heightened a lot of them, which was a big improvement because they were getting just slow enough that they were fast to hit, but still high enough that they were hurting drivers. They also lengthened the curbs about 5 feet on each end, so if you were going to hit them, you're going to be hitting them and then turning because they were going to start before the apex of the corner, which is a big improvement as well. That said, that weekend for SSKC was a huge weekend of testing in all conditions because, again, 166 drivers. A couple of the classes were pushing nearly 30 drivers on the racetrack with no pushback bumpers. So, again, the starts are going to be gnarly down by turn number 1 and 2, go in the normal direction. And we had a rainstorm about midway through Sunday, which meant the grass got tested. And, unfortunately, in turns 1 and 2, didn't work out so well. So here's what they did. This is straight off of the SKUSA Winter Superkarts USA Instagram and Facebook story. Initially, all the corners look exactly like this one. You can see there's about a 10-foot grass patch. This is coming into turn number 1, going the way that we're going to race in January. Coming out of it, which will be turn number 12 in February for the SKUSA Winter Series. Every single corner that had the runoff abused in years past now looks like that. That said, turn 1 and 2 going this normal way looked like that with only about 2 weeks for the sod to set. And with the rain that came, it just became an absolute mud pile. So AMR Motorplex went to work. These guys did not really take many days off during the holiday break. They shut down for about a week and a half, but their staff was there, came in, and so they recurbed that entire section. So now it's a super wide curve, and if you look really closely there, you'll see it's a little bit more spaced out divots and a little bit deeper and kind of grades down after that initial maybe foot to 2 feet wide of the standard exit curve that was already in place. It's a little bit lower. So it's not just going to be like you could easily go over the curbing. It's probably going to be something similar to the way that they have the runoff sections at GoPro Motorplex, because obviously that sister track, they share a lot of data. They share a lot of the same team members and, of course, the same ownership group. It's a heavily involved ownership group between Eric and the team there, so they got to learn a whole lot of that. But that's going to be interesting to see because we're only going to have a test weekend on it before we go racing. There's not going to be any more races until the SKUSA Winter Series takes the green flag on Saturday, January 8th. So that's big news coming out of the SKUSA Winter Series paddock. There's also obviously a lot of other news coming out of that as well. First and foremost, if you've been following our social media pages, big news that we announced is we're going live with them for the opening weekend of the SKUSA Winter Series. We'll be live, broadcasted on the Car Chaser platform. So those of you guys that like to watch us on YouTube and Facebook, details of how that's going to work. It's going to be a little bit different than the IME Grands. That's going to be coming out very, very soon. There's going to be some free options in it as well. We'll go over all the details on that later on this week, but it will be a full live broadcast from qualifying all the way to the podiums. And as we broadcast throughout the year, we're going to try and do more and more side shows each weekend. I'm a big fan of NASCAR Race Day Live and Trackside Live from the Speed Channel back when I was a kid. I'd love to bring more shows like that to the racetrack. I think they're a lot of fun. And speaking of Winter Tour season, not only do we have the opening weekend officially locked in and loaded for the SKUSA Winter Series, the following weekend kicks off the Florida Winter Tour. And we're going to be going live for every single round of the Rock Cup USA Florida Winter Tour, which is going to be super, super cool. So again, that's Pompano Beach, Florida, which is North Miami for the opening round, St. Petersburg for round 2, and of course Orlando Kart Center for round number 3, which will be the week after the US Pro Kart Series opener. We already announced the USPKS event. If you're keeping track, folks, that puts us already well above the 20 mark for events, and we've got more that we're hoping to add. We'd love to obviously be able to do more SKUSA events as the year goes on. This event is just the first one and only one that we have locked at this moment, and we'd love to be able to make Rock Vegas work. Rock and us are working really, really hard on trying to make sure that the internet situation works out there. That's the biggest thing that's the holdback when it comes to Las Vegas, especially because the Strip is so close to the airport. So that's a lot of the big and exciting news that we had coming out of the week. But most of all, again, going back to it, there was still a little bit more that we wanted to talk to these guys about with the SKUSA Winter Series. That was, of course, the removal of the pushback bumpers. So we've had almost every driver we brought on this show get annoyed and want them to go away for a variety of reasons, whether it's because a driver annoyed you early in the race and back in the day. These guys can tell you if you were blocking on lap 2, you're probably going to get sent if you did the wrong thing, especially with a veteran group that you were racing around. That doesn't happen anymore because of the pushback. So that's going to be open. And the starts obviously cleaned up a lot by the pushback bumpers. But SKUSA, as they mentioned here, they invested a lot in their video marshaling system, over $75,000 and probably at least a 5-figure budget per weekend just on staffing alone of how much video that they use that weekend. So at each race weekend. So they're in their mind, they're spending all this money. They've got top of the line stuff. They have over 20 cameras they look at on the racetrack. And of course, you have onboard cameras you can use as well. So in their mind, they can police it. My personal stance has always been that the class sizes are the biggest thing that you can kind of clean the starts up, because as these guys know, not only have they been coaching drivers and working under the team tents, but we've had the pushbacks for quite a few years, guys. Everyone's figured out a way to really make the bumpers dent in and the pushbacks go in not nearly as easily as they did the first year around, whether it's putting the bumpers out in the sun or making sure you tighten them. I mean, every single way in the series can try and police it. But, by the end, while you did have to pay attention, you couldn't just ram a guy. I think there were probably less pushbacks, even as many penalties as there have been, than there were in that first year when everyone was learning how to use them. I mean, am I right with that, fellas? Sonny, Luke, Artie, I think everyone's kind of figured them out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's an easy statement to make for sure.
Yeah, so we'll get their thoughts on that. The last bit of news before I wanted to hand it over to our entire crew that we've got here tonight, of course, the US Pro Kart Series finally announced their second location. They had been searching around. There were rumors of Speed Sports Racing Park. We had rumors of a number of different other racetracks they were looking at. Of course, you have brand new racetracks that were in development. Dallas Karting Complex is having a facelift for 2022. So is the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati. Both of them are really pushing and would love to have big races come back. Obviously, Speed Sports would love to have big races come to that racetrack as well. Parking's a big deal for them, but they decided ultimately they're going to go to GoPro Motorplex, and they say they're going to run a layout that has never been run before. The easy way out is obviously to do it the way that they did for the X30 and KA shootouts, and you just change one corner. But the original layout that these guys were supposed to run for the IME Grand National Championship shootouts was going to be a track that was mainly backwards direction from the normal direction GoPro Motorplex goes, and they had some technical difficulties scoring it to be able to get it to work. They were working on the timing and scoring loop, and ultimately just couldn't come together last second. So they made the change was great. I mean, the racing was phenomenal, especially the X30 shootout, arguably one of the best races of the year, from every battle, every wreck to the last lap, crazy pass for the win. But they were originally going to run a completely different layout. So that could be the layout these guys are looking at. USPKS definitely, as a push of the envelope to try and listen to the drivers saying they want to go to different places and at least different layouts. And I think the layouts at GoPro now with the runoff they have is different. But it's a pretty similar schedule they're going to have for next year now, with the change basically being Ocala to Orlando, because we're still going to have Road America on the schedule with the same layout they've run. We're still going to have Newcastle. They could go backwards. They could go forwards. And we could have GoPro. So I know for you guys, Sonny, we don't know exactly what East Coast races you'll get to, but Luke and Artie, you guys have been to all of them this year. You're going to be at all of them again next year, with RPG. Going back to GoPro, it's not. I mean, you guys, West Coast guys seem to like it a lot more than the East Coast guys because there's so much East Coast racing there. Have you guys gotten sick of that racetrack yet? Because all of our East Coast kids are tired of it.
I haven't really. I think the track's pretty cool. The facility's amazing. The area is super cool. I always really enjoy going there, especially for the IAME Grand Nationals. That was probably one of the funnest races I've been to in my karting career. Just with the late schedule, with the shootouts every night, it was really enjoyable to be there for that.
Yeah, and I mean, in all fairness, it's a world-class facility. There's only so many places, and they go over this in the article as well. There's only so many places these guys can go with how big the parking is. And that was the thing they were working on. And then obviously there's the negotiation of, wanting to make sure that they get paid and they get their expenses covered. And it's very easy for everybody now to be an armchair expert and say, oh, they need to invest more. But, I think not to fully, just to play devil's advocate with any of these series that are trying to make money, they only really end up on top for a couple of years if you look back at the cycle. I mean, if you go back to 2017, USPKS was burning a big hole with 60 entries at the final round. And I think the biggest weekend they had that year was maybe 110 or 100. And that's not enough when you count all the staff that a series brings, even with sponsor money, even with parking, even with everything for them to be profitable. So they've only really had a nice profitable run for the last couple seasons. And that kind of balances out for the seasons that they were really, really small. So in any case, we're going back there. But the big change obviously for this year is going to be that we've got no pushbacks for the SKUSA Winter Series. They've said it's a test. And I want to go around the room and get everyone's individual opinion. So Luke, you first off, are you excited, or are you kind of maybe not so excited the pushbacks are going to be gone for your drivers for SKUSA Winter Series?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's pros and cons to both. Keeping the bumper and getting rid of it. I mean, I thought it cleaned up the racing a lot. I don't know if you guys remember, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the starts were really rough. I think over time we kind of figured out how to make it harder to get the pushback to deploy. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking to see how the senior starts play out. I think there's probably going to be more crashes. But at the same time, you see drivers like Freddie Slater with the World Championship. He lost it because of the pushback, and he clearly kind of deserved to win that race. So I think I see both sides of it for sure. But it's just everything in racing is we just got to race by the rules, right? So we're just going to teach our drivers to, maybe do things a little different with the bumper now, right? But yeah.
Sonny, anything else you got to add? I mean, what are your thoughts? Are you kind of happy that it's going away? I'm sure from a shifter standpoint, I think everybody was happy to see that get pushed back out.
Yeah, as far as the shifter racing goes, I don't know many people that are in favor of it. I think, honestly, when they made it mandatory for the shifter categories, here in the States at least, it kind of caught people off guard. Again, to go with what Luke said, for sure, hands down, the starts, opening laps, and all the single speed categories, it helped a lot. Now, also, with the whole Freddie Slater World Championship thing, I think a lot of times all our headlines with a pushback bumper is when a driver kind of loses a race because of it. I never really hear headlines or any news about how the right decision was made because of a pushback for a race win. I mean, really, I see nothing to lose for SKUSA. They can try it. If it's a mess, they can go right back. I mean, like you said, they have the marshaling system. So, I mean, really, if they're going to get rid of the pushback bumpers, it's on them to make sure they make the calls with the cameras.
Right. Artie, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of them. I think like something that'll be interesting. I was just talking to Brady about this yesterday, is like some of these mini kids have never raced without a pushback. So like it'll be interesting to see how they race versus, you know, the people who were around 4 or 5 years ago when we didn't have the pushback. I'm interested to see that. But yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to both sides of it. It'll be cool to see, or interesting to see what the Winter Series looks like with it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, that's honestly good. I didn't even think about that. That's a really good point. That like, because you think it could go two ways. It could either be that like you take the training wheels off a kid's bike and he rides the same way because he doesn't need them anymore, right? Or you take the parachute off a sprinter and this kid goes 100 miles an hour, you know? So they're either going to go one or two ways. Either they're going to think because they have no pushbacks, they can just ram everybody, or the natural like instinct and almost subconscious of them not running into each other out of a fear of a pushback is going to keep them from doing it. So I don't know.
That's exactly what we were talking about. It was like,
yeah,
it's either going to go the two opposite directions, especially with those kids. Like you never know.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, for all you guys subscribe to us, following us, you're going to be able to watch it. Every single lap of the action is going to be streamed. We're not going to be live on practice day because we're going to be needing to get everything ready, but I'm hoping we can do a Friday night show. If we have everything together, it's still all coming together. We still have our last few commercial minutes we're getting sold. We're still getting logistics together. We're still getting the last few things tidied up with SKUSA, but at least it's in place, and we're going to be live qualifying on Saturday morning, which will be cool. So you'll be able to see how that works if you're not even at the event. And then we go to Rock, and Rock still has the pushbacks at the moment. So back-to-back weeks, we'll get to see what the racing looks like, which I don't know if we even had that when the pushbacks originally got put in by USPKS because I don't think they ever had a back-to-back week as to a SKUSA race because those were the two main ones when PKS brought their bumpers in 2017. And again, that was also the year that they brought in the KA, and that was that year that they were really, really small, trying to get a little bit bigger. So that'd be another thing too, is like, does that Rock race get way cleaned back up just because everyone puts the bumpers back on and gets kind of fearful because they haven't driven with them for a week, which I don't know if that'll happen, but at least for everybody, you know, watching at home or being in person, we're going to get to see like a complete 180 with probably full fields in each of what it's going to look like. So it'll be really interesting to see. I think I really, you know, this was another point too that they also mentioned. This is from Brian Mossman talking about how the fast group for qualifying is now going to go first instead of second, which normally the track is always a little bit better by the time the second group comes around, whether it's clearing off like a different tire rubber, you know, when we go back and forth from the medium to the softs, or the hard to the medium, I guess, you know, with the blues and reds for Avinkos. But you know, or like a drying racetrack if it rained in the morning. So that's new. And the last thing, which I don't even think I even touched on it, that I forgot actually completely, was the weights. So SKUSA's announced that they're changing their weights. They're lowering them. I think for all of us in here, we've worked enough in the sport. I think everyone's talked about this, and then there's always like a few guys where it's like, you feel bad dropping the weight and kind of making them overweight. They're not changing the KA weights, but based off the study they did, which they supposedly checked at all 6 SKUSA nationals going through Vegas and through the Pro Kart challenges, dropping 10 pounds. And usually when one series does this, the other ones fall. So I don't know if you guys have anything to add. There's not a big point for anyone. Obviously, that was the last bit of news I forgot to touch on. But SKUSA dropping their weights is interesting. It obviously is going to make the go-karts handle a little bit better, because when they're designed and built over in Europe, they're running at lower weights and higher horsepower. So we should be getting a little bit closer to factory spec now. But yeah, so that's the big bit of the news. The big reason why we brought all these guys on, though, is we want to have them talk a little bit and pick their brains about all the drivers' seasons, because we want to rank them candidly. guys maybe they didn't think were going to be as quick by the end of the year or put up the results they did, and guys maybe they thought would be better or have better seasons and didn't. And then, of course, we want to have these guys also help us predict what we should expect for 2022. There's a rookie class coming up, as there is every year, of 5 to 7 super talented drivers that have been at the top of their game in junior that are moving up into senior. There's other guys that are starting to eye up shifter, and the shifter landscape is changing now that it's starting to come back a little bit with SKUSA going to KZ and the rock shifter continuing to pick up momentum. All that comes up next later on in the show. We're going to take our first commercial break of the night. Stick with us. KC Happy Hour rolls on here, episode number 23, December 28, 2021.
KC Happy Hour is presented by Precision Performance Karting. PPK is the exclusive South Florida dealer for Coyote Motorsports kart racing chassis and Coyote's newest distributor. However, owner John Seglem and Coyote Motorsports' relationship spans across numerous decades in the sport, meaning that you've got years of winning expertise at your service. PPK offers trackside support at all of the CKNA South Division events, the CKNA Majors, such as the Spring Nationals and the Grand Nationals, the Sunshine State Karting Challenge, and a number of club races in the Southeast. PPK also has an impressive driver roster at these events, racking up multiple wins and podiums in 2021 with longtime Coyote Motorsports driver Chris Carroll and KC Happy Hour's own Paulie Massimino and Brandon Jarsacrack. If you're looking to get on the same race-winning equipment as these drivers, from the Coyote Motorsports chassis to the Odenthal motor mounts and Greyhound racing seats, Precision Performance Karting has you covered. Check out Precision Performance Karting on Facebook and Instagram, or email them at ppkartingfl@gmail.com.
There's a new engine program on the block that's already begun winning races. Speed Lab Racing Engines has already racked up wins in X30 classes at the US Pro Kart Series and Rock GP classes at the most recent Rock Vegas event. Headed up by names you can trust, such as longtime engine builder Mario Lafredo and industry veteran Mike Speed, Speed Lab Racing Engines has quickly become the engine of choice for a number of top teams in the sport, most recently servicing the entire Rolison Performance Group and Speed Concepts Racing operations at Rock Vegas, and also servicing the likes of JC Karting and Mike Doty Racing. It won't be long before this engine program gets a wait list, with his resume already filling up with wins, so make sure to reach out and get your tune-up by emailing them at speedlabracinengines@gmail.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Here we've got our driver, coach, and industry member panel, Luke Selliken and Artie Carpenter from Rolison Performance Group, Sonny Cervelli from GFC Karting. We wanted to go through some of our superstars here from 2021, rank how their seasons went, and I'll kind of recap a little bit results-wise, get everybody briefed and up to speed, and then we'll go from there and talk about our thoughts and how they went. And then, of course, we'll kind of circle back to some of these guys that'll be returning for 2022. And first, top of the list, obviously, Flying Ryan. Ryan Norberg had another banner year, arguably one of his better ones yet, which was really, really cool for him to see because, you know, you guys and Ryan talked about it a lot at USPKS GoPro when he had his interview after the weekend, you know, about winning the championship, getting his 5th national title. And really the biggest thing for him was the big jump you guys had, because he went through 2020 without a single major win through the year, and then comes back and has such a great year this year. Artie, Luke, if either of you guys have any stuff to add under the 10, I mean, the guy works really hard. He's in the car a lot, which really, really helps, especially compared to guys that maybe don't get as much seat time. But, you know, come down to it, he executed about every single event he could, with the exception of a couple little blunders. I think probably the most wrecks he said in a year, with the 3 wrecks he had through the Pro Tour. But then besides that, it's nearly a blemish-free year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan had a great year. I think we started off as a team in that category a little bit slower, maybe than we would have hoped. But I think about after Ocala and NOLA, we kind of got it rolling, and after that, I think the seniors really did really well. Yeah, I mean, Ryan's just a machine, right? Like he can race, and he's always thinking about what he can do better. And it's really cool to see him work. I think he really pushes everyone on the team pretty hard to keep improving, because it definitely didn't get easier this year. But yeah, we definitely made a good jump midway through the season, and I think the results really reflect that. Yeah,
I mean, you guys look at how much you guys came out of the gate swinging right when the new pipe and new X30 changes came out. I mean, you went on a hot streak through the whole summer. You know, sweeping, I think, almost every senior event through it. So that was pretty massive. We move on from Ryan, obviously, to one of the other elder statesmen in the class, Brandon Jarschbeck. This was the first year he went without a major race win in an X30 Pro class, and I think about 6 seasons. I think he had a win going all the way back to 2015. Actually, he has 7 seasons, 2015 to 2020, won at least one main event each year. He still was on the podium a handful of times, still had good runs. And the unfortunate part for him was outside of USPKS Ocala, which he's never had major results at in the few times he's been there, outside of a single SKUSA Winter Series win back in 2018, right by the second race of the year that he ran with USPKS, and then on through to Supernats for his 6-race schedule was by the time the new pipes came in. And that's when you guys as a team hit the stuff going. RPG was solid. Ryan was solid. The newer drivers were solid. But just kind of not as good of a year as I'm sure he wanted to have. But the good part is he'll get redemption next year because of the way that the prizes fell for PKS. He'll be back for that and probably for IME Grands. But that's just another one that's going to be back. Big name guy that I think should still be, I think is still definitely in good enough shape and should have had probably about the roughest Supernats weekend. I think one of the ones you can have for sure. We move on to Jake Drew, who he's had a couple big runs. I think he's a West Coast guy. You look at his results this year was impressive at the Summer Nats. I think the big weekend that was really impressive for him, at least for me looking back, was 2020 Summer Nats when he got on for the second weekend, going backwards on the comp cart, was top 10 through there. Mixed up. USPKS going in 2020 was this first weekend he went with them. Couldn't make all the Summer Nats weekends, which they had Dante Yu in the seat. And then we look at this year, and the little bits he was behind the wheel, both with RPM and then obviously with you guys, Sonny, with GFC. He ran well everywhere he went. I think the only weekend he really struggled was maybe a little bit over in Utah. And even then he managed to get into the top 5 by the end of each main event. So,
yeah, working with Jake Drew last year when he was with us, he won Rock the Rio. So we already knew he was a very talented driver. And then he spent this year running with other teams and other series and cars and all kinds of karts. We got him back for the Super Nationals of this year. And I tell you what, he's an extremely talented driver. For him to go out and qualify pole at 82 drivers, an X30 Pro with no teammates, just himself. I watched the kid work. He's laser focused. He takes it serious. He's the real deal for sure.
Yeah, he was impressive, especially to be an off-brand guy. And speaking of guys that weren't on OTK brands this year, Thomas Nevo is the next one that we have on our list to kind of evaluate on the season. And this was the first time in his career dating back to his mini days that he was on anything but a Burrell Art. And I think it's no secret that those guys, since Ryan left, have kind of been searching a little bit to get results. They've kind of come here and there in the single speed classes, and it kind of clouded the drivers that would be under their tent of whether or not, where their potential really lied, because it seemed like the chassis was hit or miss. There would be, Thomas had weekends where he podiumed. He had, I think, a pre-final win during one of the stints at the double weekend, the Summerfest in 2020. And then through this year, just would be up there, would be in the mix in the top 10, but wasn't really there. And then since the move to KR has been decent, and then Supernats was just on another level, really, really competitive. Won multiple heat races, top 5 in the main. Maybe missed the setup or wasn't perfectly positioned through the final. I don't think he got a great start, to be honest. I think he was coming through the field a little bit. And as we all know, Supernats is kind of a toss-up once you get into the top 10 based on how stuff shakes out. But he had probably one of the strongest endings to the year, and I think proved to a lot of people that he's a top-level guy, even though, I think a lot of that was kind of clouded a little bit before the move to the Trinity Karting Group guys. So someone that definitely is going to be one to keep an eye on for 22, because I think he's going to be back with TKG for as much as he can out of his RTI season, which is cool because that's another thing to respect out of him, just like with Jake. As much as he's pushing his car career, the guy loves to race. Like, he's still running a kart race every single weekend that he possibly can. move on to let's keep going down the list here. Cole Morgan next up. So Cole, super good in the K this year, dominant pretty much through the Pro Tour. The Morgan brothers only ran the Pro Tour and Supernats this year, and I think they ran Carson went and ran Miami Grands. I can't remember if Cole did or not. But his end of the year was pretty decent if you look in the 125 Pro Senior class. He wasn't far. He was a 15th to 20th guy in the Supernats main. I think was near the top 10 at points, if I remember right, but I'm a little bit off. And then obviously if we look at Rock Vegas, that was a weekend with less big guys in it, and he was top 5 the entire weekend. So for his second season in senior, he's about maybe a little better than where he was coming out of 2020, because 2020, even then he had some top 10 runs kind of going. Looking back at Summerfest, he wasn't fully into the top 10 with how stacked that field was, but when it thinned out by Road America, he was top 10. So he's definitely a lot closer. And then with his brother moving up in 22, I think he'll be decent. I mean, I was pleasantly impressed with how good he ran over at Rock Vegas this year. We'll keep on going down here. Hannah Greenemeyer, obviously, not a breakout year, no doubt. I mean, she's been fast every single season since her rookie season in 2017 and senior. I mean, she's just been blisteringly fast and has like a pretty distinct driving style, which we haven't really talked about on here with her. But I mean, Artie, you especially, I know you work data a lot and coach a lot. Luke, you do the same with her. I mean, the way she even just on track, you can visibly see how she drives the kart. It's almost a polar opposite to the way Ryan is. And some of the other guys under the 10, it looks like. I mean, she has normally I don't know how to exactly describe it, but she's definitely a very different posture, obviously, a little bit different style. And up until this year, I think struggled, and even maybe at the beginning of this year struggled to kind of not get bullied, because she seemed to maybe put herself in spots where she'd bloody her own nose a little bit or get her nose bloody, kind of give a guy an option to run you off, and she would get run off. But then you look through the rest of the Pro Tour, and she was, especially as by the time we got through to Utah and all the way through, I mean, she was super consistent, kind of out of trouble, and the same through Newcastle. I mean, it wasn't like a year where she broke out any more speed-wise, but definitely it looked like it was a year she matured a lot on track, and it showed. Pro Tour champion, and qualified right up at the front at Supernats. Just got one bad heat race after another. It seemed like with getting put in the wall right on the start with the how much tighter the hairpins it seemed this year.
Yeah, it was cool to see HG kind of put the whole season together and get the championship and get a race win at GoPro and get a few races. She got a race win stolen from her in NOLA, and it was cool to see her. It was cool to see her put it all together and have a complete season. It was a close championship, obviously, between her and Biggs and Ryan, but yeah, it was. I think she did great this year.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback on that, I think you hit the nail on the head, Xander. Like, I think her weakness coming into this year was probably she was super quick but not quite aggressive enough, and I think she turned it up this year a lot. We saw her really get her elbows out, and there were times where she might put a guy off the track, and it's I think that's kind of what she was missing. And so I think going into next year, maybe she might be looking for more big wins on Supernats and Rock the Rio, kind of maybe just solidify that momentum from this year.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's a good year to build. She's gonna be back next year, which will be cool, and we'll touch on that later on. I don't know. You guys might know more than me with this one got edited. We need to change that name a little bit there. Not Briggs, but Biggs. Tyner. He had honestly, I think a good year. I mean, he was in the Pro Tour points fight, right? I mean, he had good races through it. But I think after 2020, I'm sure he was probably thinking this year with where the speed was, where the aggression was. I mean, he had just about everything to kind of maybe pull off a race win, and it just didn't end up happening this year. I mean, you look at even Utah, where Hannah finally was able to kind of right the wrong from NOLA and get that first big win on the year and the first Pro Tour win. That was taken on the last lap, battling with Biggs. So he was right up there and just didn't end up having it. do you guys know too much of whether or not we'll get to see him a whole lot in action for next year? Because obviously he ran the TCR race at Coda, I think, just a couple weeks ago. Either one?
I don't have a lot of information. I'm not sure.
Yeah. We'll see.
But I know it was a tough year, but Biggs is a super talented driver, and I hope we get to see him back soon, competing for wins. Because he definitely could have. There's a lot of races that could have gone his way.
Yeah, he was up there. On to Braden Eves, another one of our KC Happy Hour guys. Braden's a super, another super talented guy, and he's run good on like every single chassis brand he's been on. This year was the second year he's been on the Kart Republic stuff. It's been, was pretty fast at most races, was a little bit off at Grands, but then was fast through practice. And even Ryan mentioned it, the guys he was clocking had good practice days, not the greatest qualifying. He mentioned he had the chain ended up coming loose on him, so he was a little bit qualified, a little bit slower, worked through the mess a little bit, and then got junked in the first lap of Supernet. So good year, not too much out of him. Next year we'll see probably a couple more part-time starts for maybe 2 or 3, I think. Probably come back for the Grands, probably come back for Super Nats if it works. But he loves to race, just like Jake, just like Thomas, even with everything he's working to try and get his road to Indy career continuing to launch it up. I mean, that's a guy that normally, at this point, I think he's established himself up there with Jarsa Kraken, up there with Norberg as a guy that normally gets clocked as soon as he goes out for the very first practice onto whatever track we end up at. So, again,
you always gotta
another
keep
guy.
An eye on Beeves.
Yeah.
His first laps and his last laps are always really impressive. They're fun to watch for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Guy has some amazing freaking starts, man. I don't know how he does it sometimes. Let's go on down here. Trey Brown. So, Trey's, I think, been a guy that's always been like on the bubble of like whether or not, the funding was fully there to run like a properly run program for a whole season. And, you look back, he had drove for the solo kart guys, which was, a small brand, different chassis design, didn't really have any testing on it for the Summerfest last year, and obviously didn't really run too well. Only guy who's ever really run super, super well on that go-kart was Jesus Rios when they went down to Homestead, which is where Jesus lives, a few years back for the SKUSA Winter Series. And that was also during the era of the standard Homestead curbs, where it was less about how good your chassis ran through the center of the corner and flex. And it was more, as long as you could throw it over the curbing, you could be fast. So I'm sure that was probably a knock to his confidence, because if you go back to 2019, the guy was a number 3 Pro Tour plate holder. He was, so again, top 3 in the championship. In Ryan's last of his 4-year stint, kind of falls off. And then this year, should have probably another woulda, coulda, shoulda for a lot, and probably had the most heartbreaking luck, I think, out of anybody for the weekends that he was running really good. Going back even to Utah, where he was the only one I think that had anything for Biggs, Ryan, or Hannah through the whole weekend, and ended up getting into it with Ryan on really not much of his doing. Ryan just kind of locked the brakes up, took him out in the pre-final on one of the days. The other day wasn't as fast. So, but I think this year was a good year for him in a way that he kind of reminded everybody that he's a top-level guy and a guy that can go out and win races if the equipment's there. And he's got I think he's kind of unsure on his 2022 plans because if you look at I think he's got trade school he's looking at going to, which means it's going to tie his time up a little bit. And he was able to work off a lot of his bills and do a lot of coaching and stuff like that with RPM that was able to let him race. So I don't know if we'll get to see a whole lot of TV, but I know that he wants to be back. He's going to try and make some starts, but I don't know in what degree next year we'll get to see a whole lot of him. So branching off from him to Paulie Massimino, who also had a heck of a year in a lot of ways. Summer Nats 2020, first Pro Tour X30 podium, and then comes in this year, and he was a contender at nearly every USPKS event, became kind of a team leader in a way with RPM, and led the way, obviously, at every GoPro race, which he's home track was going to do really, really good there. But another guy who I think stepped it up big time this year. We pushed him a lot. He's been here a lot. He's been on the East Coast, so we know him really well, and we featured him in 2020's episodes that had USPKS races in it. But I think this was a whole another step up for him, especially branching out of Brandon's shadow a little bit, getting away from MDR, and just in the same way Thomas got away from PSL, and can still run good with Trinity, and if not, ran even better. In Paulie's case, kind of on his own a little bit, not having a mentor to push him and needing to push himself and also mentor some of the younger guys, and has done really, really well this year.
Yeah, I mean, he was right there all season, no matter what race we were at. He was right there in the group all year.
Yeah,
I think he had
super
a pretty
quick
good season.
We'll touch here quickly on Hayden Jones, and then we'll go into the rookie class a little bit from this year. So Hayden obviously made the last minute jump over to you guys in the last few races of the season, and I mean, he was going to be good at GoPro because he ran really good there. It's his home track as well. Ran good in 2020. It was expected he was going to run good. I don't know if anyone expected him to run as good as he did, so it definitely was a level up for sure when he went with you guys and won in a big way on the first day. With the team, and then goes to Supernats, and I think that was a turning point for him with how quick he was, because in qualifying the pace was phenomenal for him, especially if you compare it to how he was. I don't even think he ran. No, it would have been junior. Sorry, so his first senior Supernats, first Supernats altogether, and was super, super quick.
Yeah. So, Hayden definitely surprised me. I think we knew he was going to do really well at GoPro, but I really think had things gone a little different at Supernats, he would have been on the podium. We did a little test in Oregon with him, and I drove on the track with him. And Hayden's a really coachable kid, and I definitely think the move is going to pay off this coming year for sure.
Let's move on off to him. Obviously, he's got a big year coming up to be able to run with RPG for a full season, and he's coming back for 22. Let's talk about this year's rookie class. I think hands down, Connor Zilish is rookie of the year with the banner season he's had. But there was more to it from him. I mean, Artie, Luke, you guys, you followed his European results. Sonny, I know you're a big European karting fan as well yourself. You followed what he was able to do over there. And he came out of the gate blazing, right, with the first dominating win in his first ever weekend, and went on a streak for I think his first 4 senior weekends of the year, or his first 4 senior U.S. starts had at least one main event on the weekend, if not the main event on the weekend. Just super impressive out of the gate, and then especially to do it on his own. He wasn't under the wing of somebody bigger. He was with great talent under the tent coaching him, but no other drivers really with him.
Yeah, Connor. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sonny. Go.
Here, we'll give it to you, Sonny.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, watching Connor this year has been impressive. I didn't follow a ton of his racing when he was in juniors, but this year I saw him for the first time drive at Pompano on the Levanto tire when it was new. And just watching him drive from the mechanics stand, I mean, he adapted the tire well. I mean, he's a smart kid. I don't know. He's 14, 15 years old.
Just turned 15.
Okay, yeah. I mean, he's fun to watch. I hope he could race go-karts next year, because I think he pushes a lot of the drivers, really. I don't see him drive like a 15-year-old. If you didn't know who Connor Zilish was, he looked like he'd have as much experience as Jarsakrak, Norberg, some of these other guys.
Artie, was that similar to what you were going to add to it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think Connor's performance this year, at least for me, wasn't super surprising. Just watching how talented that kid is through juniors and through his stint in Europe. Like, I expected him to be at the front from the get-go, and he kind of was. I mean, Connor's a threat every weekend, no matter what the engine package is, no matter what tire we're on. Connor's always there. So wasn't super surprising, but he had a really good first year and senior. And I know usually first year and senior sometimes you get beat up a little bit, especially as a 14-year-old. But
yeah. Just
ahead,
to add
Luke.
on a little bit. I mean, it's I don't think the last rookie senior season, I think that was that solid to start with, was maybe Askew or Kirkwood back in the day, back in the Rotax days, where they just were on it right away. But yeah, it's interesting to see too how different Ryan and Connor kind of kind of race, and their driving style. It's super interesting. Like watch either of their onboards, and it's like polar opposite. But it just kind of shows that when you have the feel, when you have that like raw ability, you can get away with different driving styles. But yeah, I mean, he was definitely the guy that pushed RPG and pushed Ryan harder than I think anyone probably has in a while. And yeah, I think we could definitely see him, move up the ladder into cars, and I hope he succeeds, because I think he's got that talent.
Yeah, he's got a stacked year. For the viewers that follow him at least loosely, obviously he's got a packed 2022. He's going to be running the full MX5 Cup Series season, and then he's also going to run the majority of the Trans Am season, less 2 weekends I think that are conflicts. I know he wants to come back for the Miami Grand National Championship and come run that. It's his home track. It's an event that all the drivers really loved running, and I think it misses being so late in the year in October both of the seasons. I don't know if MX5 Cup, where the Petit Le Mans weekend ends up, if that's anywhere close to it. I don't think it is. So I think he should be good for that. And then obviously everybody clears up for Vegas. So I can see Connor being a very similar to a Braden Eves type schedule next year, which will be cool to at least keep him. But that's like Luke said, I mean, he's got the talent. He's set up now with some backing and the right partners, I think, that could take him up and up and up. And I mean, that's, he's got everything. And the biggest thing to me that was always so impressive to Connor, and it's easier to say this obviously with him off the screen, is he is thinking on a much different level than a lot of 15-year-olds when it comes even off the track. When it comes to the social media stuff, a lot of kids are normally very kind of anxious, don't want to post pictures of their face, rather just pictures of them with a helmet on or in the go-kart, and very minimal. Connor he's budding with confidence, and he takes his licks fine if you tease him, but he's also more than willing to post and be active. And he's like, I did this, did that. Xander, what do you think? How do I grow this, or how do you grow that? And he's interested. He's learning every aspect of the sport when it comes down to networking. He's no problem going and talking to guys. And I think that total package comes along, with him. It comes along with Brent Cruz, and it comes along with a couple kids in every generation that not only have this amazing talent behind the wheel, but even talking with Ryan or with Brandon, guys that have been at it for a lot of years, they wish that they would have at his age probably thought the way that he did, because racing's so much more off the track, especially if you want to make a career, whether it's in go-karting or cars or any discipline of motorsport. He thinks on that level too. And a big credit, obviously, at that point to his dad and his mom for training him, and the people they put him with, to get him to, to think that way. But that's also just naturally him. He thinks in a very analytical, top level driver way when it comes to how to be fast. But his media and personality and understanding every other aspect of the sport is a lot further along than a lot of other kids that I've talked to. And I'd say the only other kid that in the rookie class that was probably really similar to him, or a couple of them definitely have picked up for sure. But I mean, he's on another level for sure, when it comes to that. And there were other rookie class standouts, and we'll touch on them really briefly before we get to our pro shifter guys from 2021. Under your guys' camp, Nate Cicero. I call him a rookie because it's his first year in X30 senior, which is certainly a different animal when then it comes to running KA, but it's his second full senior season. He ran a full senior year in KA under you guys, and in a similar way to Paulie. Paulie kind of did a reset button year in 2019. 2019. Went down and ran KA at the Pro Tour and KA at Supernats, and then jumped up. Nate has run a couple X30 junior races back home, but the development and then really the light switch for him was right around when you guys hit your stride in the summer. I mean, he rolled on right then, because when he rolled out of the gate in Homestead, he was 10th to 15th, and instantly by the time we got to May and by the time we got to USPKS Road America, I mean, he was rolling, super, super fast.
Yeah, seeing his development through the year from the first 2 Homestead races to, where he was at in the middle of August, like he picked up so much. And the thing he struggled with at the beginning was just the aggression of the X30 racing. It's so different. And it was cool to see him, pick that up as quick as he did. And he got a podium in Utah. got a Pro Tour win in Newcastle, and he was just improving every weekend, and his speed got better and better every weekend. It was super cool to see.
Yeah. Also, just piggybacking off of Artie, he puts in the work too. Like he came out. We did multiple test weekend training sessions out in Oregon. Like he flew all the way across the country to train, and I think along with Connor, Nate is one of those guys that I could really see, going places. He's super talented, and he wants to work hard. And I think the X30 racing was tough at first, but we saw that pass on Jeffers was pretty awesome at the Rock Vegas. Like that was something that he wouldn't have done 8 months ago. So yeah, look for Nate to. I think he's going to do some car stuff as well.
Yeah, he got he's got his Spec MX5 scholarship, so he'll get to run the Spec MX5 Cup Series. But I know Nate's plan when I talked to him in Vegas is that he wants to get to as many of the big shows again and run another year, get it a full year under his belt. Now probably has a lot of confidence coming into 22, and he'll be a guy to watch. There's a few guys we'll say farewell to that only are going to be with us for the rookie class. Alex Stanfield was one of them, and was a guy that started off the year really strong in Florida Winter Tour, had good runs in the SKUSA Winter Series, and then, was kind of up and down, I think, probably not where, maybe he wanted to through the rest of the season. And the same for Max Opolsky, who started off super strong at SKUSA Winter Series. And then, the year kind of goes up and down, and that's how it goes for a lot of juniors when they come up. On the opposite end, you have guys like Thomas Annunziata, who got really, really hot by the end of the summer and started putting some really good runs together under the Mike Doty camp. And then, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about probably two of the just naturally fastest senior rookies in the class, and that would have to be Alessandro DiTullio for sure. I mean, the guy has just a lot of natural speed. And again, you can see that. And I think what proves that for me is not only is he not on a what you could say off brand with Parolin, but he's by himself. He's never had a fast teammate all season for a rookie season, and didn't have one in junior either, and was quick and could figure stuff out and get up front. And that's impressive for a kid that's 15 years old. Had obviously the issue at Homestead earlier this year, and the mistake made, and that it cost him. And that was, I think, just a manufactured deal of being young and hot and having your first weekend where you could win, and you guys could talk about it. When you get running up front in your very first weekend, you're nervous. I mean, everything's just on a high when you start off that fast, and then you're battling these guys. I mean, Luke, you've had a really good initial couple years into senior right off the gate coming out of junior. You relate to that, of kind of that initial extra nerves when you jump up?
Yeah, definitely. The first day I ran a senior, it was a Challenge of the Americas, and I got yelled at by Matt Johnson. So I can relate for that for sure, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna pass this guy, and then I'm gonna pass this guy, and then and then all of a sudden this guy's yelling at me, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to change my approach. So yeah, definitely fast driver. I don't know what his plans are, but especially at some of these tracks, he's super good at Homestead, really good. Seems like on the Levanto tire as well.
Yeah, he's not a big budget guy. I think they have connections, and it'd be cool to. I know he'd love to get in a car, and he's tested, I think, before. And the Parolin guys do have a link and a goal to set up an F car ladder. They have some F4 cars in their bay, but at least for him, the other thing that's impressive about him is he does not get to do a lot of testing. He's their lead driver. He's their sponsor driver for Parolin USA. Between the factory and the U.S. team kind of supporting him. And he just really got to drive at the big events, which makes it even more impressive for your first senior year to be on a limited schedule and maybe 2 or 3 practice weekends at home on the season to be as quick as he is. So he's going to be back for SKUSA Winter Series for sure, for Rock Winter Tour. I guarantee he'll be back probably in the car or in the cart, all season next year. So I think a guy that could probably could definitely be a championship contender if he can keep everything together. And I think, you go one way or another, right? You either come in a little bit too hot and you make some guys upset in your first season, or you come in a little bit too nice and get pushed around like Nate. And most guys normally are able, if they're really good and talented, by year 2, kind of be like, hit the reset, find the new, the happy equilibrium and go. And the other kid I wanted to say was really fast, and I'm going to count him in this year's rookie class for pro senior is going to be Jack Jeffers, because he only got the last 3 races of the year up in senior and was quick. Like, I mean, he had a lot of speed even in junior. I think was one of the guys that would always be really, really fast. And the Speed Concepts guys, the Speed Lab engines, and I'm not just saying this because they're a partner here, but they had him running really, really quick out of the gate. At USPKS GoPro, one of the more stacked X30 fields, top 10. Rock Vegas, if that radiator doesn't snap, Nate doesn't get to make that pass, and that kid wins in his second big senior race by pulling away. So, and everybody forgets too, earlier in that race, Tulio was pulling away before a motor problem slowed him down. So in both cases, I mean, 2 guys that I think will be really quick and really fun to watch next year, especially if he's joined by Aiden Ingrata, and they're going to have a 2-driver, young, very, very fast camp with the Speed Concepts guys if both of them move up, which I think Ingrata is either borderline or could move up into 22. So very, very excited to see where he goes. But yeah, super, super talented kid. I want to move on to our shifter guys. And with our shifters, we obviously talk about the big 3. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about them. First up, AJ Myers, Florida Winter Tour champion, 3rd year in a row, 2nd year under the Magic brand, really 3rd year with a similar chassis design. There have been, you have obviously Jake French on Burrell, Danny Formal on IPK. We had a mix of different guys that were quick on GFC material with you guys, Sonny. You had Hunter Pickett would run good on different weekends. You had Oliver obviously come good at the end of 2020 and go prove the package at Rock Vegas. But for AJ, I mean, he was a class above and was a class above speed-wise even in Las Vegas. All 4 of the marquee shifter events on the year, if you count the 3 Florida Winter Tours and then Supernats, where we got to see kind of an East and West Coast combination. He was quick and by far the guy to beat, and probably the guy to beat going into 22.
Yeah, AJ all season long was on point. I mean, it's clear he's confident in his own ability. He's confident in his material, his team, and everyone around him. I mean, every time he hits the track, everyone's timing him. He's the guy in shifter. Everyone's working hard to beat. Yeah, I mean, going forward in 2022, as long as nothing changes in his program, I mean, odds are it'll be the same thing. We'll all be trying to keep up with AJ, and hopefully some of us can do it next year. But yeah, he's been the most impressive by far.
Yeah, we move on from him. Danny Formal. Danny's another guy who's kind of got some car stuff in the works. Unfortunately, unlike AJ's not unfortunately in that same boat, but definitely a guy that should be with how talented he is. And it's just a unfortunate truth of racing. Not everyone gets the backing of the lineup or whatever opportunity. Danny obviously does, and that's really cool for him. But I think we'll still see him in a lot of big races and next year. I know Greg with Leading Edge wants to bring him back for as many races as he can ongoing. And obviously he was, king of the streets at Pompano this year. I think he ended Thursday 4/10 up on the shifter field when the grip was still really low. And, there's no one that's his size or close to it. French is the closest, and he was the closest guy to him in Vegas. Whenever you go to these low grip tracks, these big upper body guys seem to have a huge advantage, especially in shifter. And he was, again, just another, not anything unexpected out of him. Had a great year, was quick, and outside of a bad motor and had a low horsepower package at Summer Nats, he was a contender everywhere he went. Jake French, decent year, not bad. Just was kind of second fiddle to either of these guys at either of the events. I think at Winter Tour he had podiums. Obviously, Super Nats was up there. Rock Vegas was right there in second all the way to the end and was a little bit quicker, and maybe could have won one heat race, but just missed a little bit. And then all 3 of these guys, I mean, I don't know, it doesn't seem like anyone's necessarily majorly above it. They're all so good and they're all on different material. It's like exactly what you want out of racing, where you can't really tell if they're just missing a little bit on setup or a little bit on driving, but they're all like, because they're at 99%, right? And they're just missing like that last bit one. and that separates the three of them who ends up being on top. So briefly going over those guys, Matias Ramirez was good at Winter Tour this year. I think was probably a little bit farther off at Rock than where he wanted to be. He said he wanted this year to kind of be a swan song, wanted to end off with one big hurrah, and didn't get it. So I think we'll probably see him want to make some more starts in 22. But he was one of those guys that was up there. And then Artie, your boy Austin Garrison, wicked fast at most of the Winter Tours, without a doubt, and nearly ended up winning one before he went for a spin. For a guy that doesn't get a lot of seat time in the package, he's being able to go with those big threes impressive,
Yeah, this year getting to work with Austin a little bit, worked with him through the Winter Tour doing data stuff, and then I worked for him at the Rock Shootout race in Sonoma. It's cool to see how he works and his driving abilities, because the kid's super talented. And yeah, I mean, he was close on a lot of occasions. I think going into next year, I think he'll have some more opportunities and some more chances to get those results that we all kind of wanted. But yeah, I think Austin coming into a new team, learning the people, learning the program, I think he did really good this year.
I want to move over to the rookie class really quick, Sonny, here, and talk. You and I have had a lot of talks about, moving up where kids can kind of move up from junior to senior and the transition be almost seamless, and you've liked how it seems like it takes a few more seasons to really get your footing in shifter. Brent Cruz is, just like Connor. I mean, that's a generational type talent kid. 6 at Supernats, competitive almost everywhere that he was this year, and podiumed at Summernats. Was right behind the battle for the win between Jake and I think Jake and AJ on one of the days. What were your thoughts on just turned 14? I don't even know if he's turned 14 yet. 13 going on 14, because he's always, his dad knows even years in advance, his stepdad Matt, to ask the series and get the no, so next year they could get the yes when they just keep begging. Eventually the door finally opens for him. What was your thoughts on him, being out there for a lot of the shifter races?
Yeah, I mean, Brent shocked me, honestly. I went last year watching him in a 100cc junior kart on a hard tire to now being on the podium at Pro Tour in a KZ shifter kart is pretty phenomenal, really. I don't know how much he gets in the go-kart, but I tell you, if he keeps on practicing and racing a bunch, by the end of next year, he'll be one of the guys, hands down. I mean, even in Super Nationals this year, he was one of the front-running Americans with, 0 temporary circuit experience in the KZ. It's impressive what he can do.
Yeah, he's on, he's always been super, super talented. And we've gotten a treat to see him and Connor grow up, 2 North Carolina kids with the East Coast. And it just so happened that they ended up being over there. But I know that he's got a busy schedule. He's already, I think he's probably running all the classes. I don't know if he's running all the classes at Social Shootout. I got to imagine he's running, because he ran there last year and just got the waiver to go run the Chili Bowl in 2 weeks. So, which they've granted for a few drivers before, only a handful. I think he's one of 2 this year between himself and Gavin Bichelle that got waivers to run under the age of 16. So I think everybody in karting, if you guys don't already tune into the Chili Bowl, you have a reason to tune in this year, because if that kid kicks butt out there, it speaks to not only how good he is, but how talented, karting can make a driver and can be, because he's, it was impressive, very impressive for how good he was, to come into the Supernats and didn't, again, like Connor, didn't seem to really rub anyone in the wrong way. Didn't really get into trouble with anybody. Didn't really make any of the guys mad. I didn't see any guys shouting at him. They were shouting in the scales for sure. Pro shifter, quite a bit of it at the front, but he wasn't involved in any of it. So another kid to watch. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the rookies in 2022 and wrap this show up here when we come back from this commercial break. Got a couple more things to touch on with our crew. We've got some questions that have come in. We'll be answering those. If you guys have any more FAQs here for some of our new guys that we've never had on the show before, of course, between Sonny, Artie, and Luke, go ahead and send them in. And, of course, any questions you got for myself. And then we'll answer them after the break.
Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as IAMI and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jekko Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com. As the Western importer of the Praga and Formula K chassis brands, Leading Edge Motorsports is a high-performance kart shop and race team with a simple mission: teach others the joy of high-performance driving, supply our customers with the highest quality products and services, and most of all, win races. With our remarkable racing inventory, expert services, and top-ranked national-level team to back it up, we'll help to get your new kart racing package up and running fast. From arrive and drive service to kart preparation and driver coaching to the parts you need to get you back on the racetrack, Leading Edge Motorsports is the industry answer.
I'm Billy Vincent, owner of MPG Motorsports. What we do at MPG is we try to keep it a nice, fun family atmosphere, try to combine sort of the bigger things and of the bigger teams and the professionalism down with sort of some of the fun sort of family-oriented atmosphere. We try to not only develop drivers, but also the parents and the families for just in knowledge in general in motorsports. It all starts in karting. What we try to do is try to help the drivers, the moms, the dads understand the sport of motorsports in general, not just karting, but what it takes to get all the way up through. Whether you end up wanting to be a driver or a mechanic or an engineer, you know, we can help you with that, and that's what we're here for. If you're interested in joining us at MPG, our home base is at Whiteland Raceway Park in Indianapolis, and you can contact us at info@willpowerkart.com. And one of our great people will reach out to you, and we'll try to put the best program together.
Welcome back, everybody, here after our final commercial break. We wanted to make sure we touched on your guys' questions as we take a little bit of the break from our driver evaluations and go on over here. I hope our viewer here is tuning in. This was from our viewer, one of our YouTube viewers, Brandon, asking how the teams work with deals work with teams. Is Australian looking to get into cars, if not coming over to the U.S. and going karting. And obviously there's a big, it's a similar scene over there in Australia. Obviously they don't have us. But in any case, you know, getting in front of any brand really is what it comes down to. You know, if you really boil down what gets you any kind of sponsorship help in the sport, we're working on continuing to broaden the audience, but it comes down to moving product. So if you can, in one way or another, sell more go-karts or get more guys to run with a program, you're going to get help their value in return for that. So if you're looking for ways to kind of fund your racing, it's no different than over there with the way it's structured. Obviously over here, I'm pretty stoked about everything we're doing with the live streaming and stuff like that. And we'll have more eyes on it, which hopefully will bring in even some outside sponsorship funding, not just us, but the teams in the sport. But yeah, the biggest thing is just understanding how you can bring extra value to any of these teams. You know, we're doing everything we can to make sure that when the teams went on the racetrack or the brands went on the racetrack on the big stage, that it helps influence new customers and get them more value for pumping money to, whether it's paying coaching or paying for the big rig or paying to make sure they have good material for the drivers that pay to race with them. But if you want to get into a point of, even getting some help, it comes down to bringing value. So whatever way you can learn to do that. And that goes out to any of the junior drivers out there. And, like I was talking about Connor earlier, a lot of drivers don't look at social media as really a big return. And it normally isn't for the first year or two that you really invest in it. Even if you go back to Ryan Norberg's YouTube channel, he's got years and years of getting teased at the racetrack for making videos and still does. Obviously, Artie and Luke, you guys are big teased on him, and Sonny, you've been under the tent. The guy takes his licks for making all the YouTube videos that he does. Every single one, whether it's the cover shot he puts up or anything. But guy stuck with it year after year after year, and I think he's in year 4 or year 5. And finally now monetized, able to make a little side money off the YouTube. That goes back into the racing budget. He has sponsors because of the reach that he has. He has a big social media reach, the biggest in the U.S. out of any karting driver we have, and bigger than a lot of European karting guys and world guys. So, in short, even though that was a bit of a long-winded answer, that's all the stuff you can do to kind of help your racing career, whether it's U.S. karting or not. We had a question there asking about what happened to Mr. Sean Owens. And unfortunately, Sean, if you're listening, I don't think he is, but he might end up going back and listening to this. It was my mistake. I coordinated the having Sean on the show through Sean. I didn't actually go through Sean's boss which is his fiance, and because of that, I was not able to lock in Sean. He had other commitments that the boss told him he had to get to, which was a nice dinner tonight. So I hope Sean's enjoying his dinner. We don't have Sean Owens on. We're gonna have him on really soon. I love that guy. He's gives a lot of good perspective, and he's a really funny guy around the racetrack, which we're gonna miss a little bit with some of the new stuff he's doing for 22 that won't have him traveling as much. There was also a couple other ones. This is from Robert Fees Racing, I believe, asking why the US Pro Car Series doesn't have shifter. Kind of mainly because that's an IAME back series, and the IAME shifter motor initiative was kind of pushed by SKUSA, not by IAME in the country as a whole, especially with being East and West is the shorter answer. And also there just hasn't been a big shifter contingent on the East Coast in a long, long time. Even before KZ and Rock is pretty local to Florida and certain pockets all over. And their shifter racing on the regional level, that's good, especially with the Star Series. But it's never been that big, and USPKS is an East Coast-based series. It's just class just hasn't been that big over there, and pushed as hard as it was over on the West Coast. So numbers breed numbers. If enough, if they got a fully prepaid entry list of 40 or even 30 shifters for the season, they'd offer the class. And this was obviously also to Justin. I swear I did not spoil GoPro. That was an accident from an earlier show. I didn't know about it. I actually thought I was going to be going about one or two other different places. I know Speed Sports was a serious consideration. They were looking at a mix of different tracks, whether it was Cincinnati, DKC, Charlotte Motor Speedway, obviously those kart races. That's another option in North Carolina, but GoPros is safe and known option. Parking works there. Everything works there. There's nothing wrong with that. And SJ Perkins, I know I teased about the shifters. That was to the Florida Winter Tour announcement. I don't have anything shifter news tonight. There's no change in that environment, which is good for shifter racing because for the first time in a while, they're stable. And I think that'll allow the classes to grow on both sides, whether it's KZ/IAME/Rock. There's no real major changes coming in the pipeline for 22, which has allowed, I think, the X30 and the KA stuff to grow massively. So good stuff for all them. And I think that about covers most of the questions that we had so far coming on in. Looking into 22, the rookie class coming up, two big names out of junior. A West Coast kid, Carson Morgan, East Coast kid, Jeremy Fletcher. Carson's had probably the most dominating run to end his junior career in a while. We talked about how good Connor's rookie season was. Luke, you said it was probably about as good as we've seen out of Kyle Kirkwood and Oliver Askew's rookie years, which was back in 2013, 2014, I think. And in the case of Carson Morgan, I don't know the last time I've seen a junior that dominant at the end, because it was always usually a couple that were really, really good. But 9 main event wins to close out his junior career. Going into senior, the drivers talked about it a little bit last week, that in junior you can kind of bully some of the younger drivers a little bit and kind of intimidate them, and you don't get that factor when you go to senior, especially you're on the opposite end again. You go from being the big fish to the little fish. Do you guys have any thoughts on what you how those two guys will fare? Because those are kind of the two biggest names, and obviously they've won the 2 junior championships on the East and West, between Fletcher winning USPKS and Morgan winning Pro Tour.
Yeah, I mean, Carson Morgan, I have no doubt he'll be fast when he moves right up. Definitely last year, I would say both Fletcher and him, or I guess I should say in 2021 this year, their success came from just kind of having better racecraft, I feel, than a lot of the other drivers. You could see where they just have a couple more years in the class, and they can kind of, I think the other drivers from last week were spot on with it. They could almost kind of bully the other juniors a little bit. Definitely next year, they're going to have the speed to run up front, no doubt. It's just going to be seeing if they can keep themselves at the front of the race, for the entirety of it, and maybe not crash out or fall back or just other situations. It's kind of getting that experience and kind of growing up a little bit in the class.
Yeah, going off of Sonny, I just know for me, I mainly do data and coach for the juniors at RPG. So, I was familiar. watching Fletcher and Morgan, because those were kind of two of the guys we were chasing a lot. I think they're super talented, like fast drivers for sure, and their racecraft definitely shown this year. The only thing that I'm kind of interested to see, I think, for both of them is the adjustment from the hard tire to the soft tire. I think, kind of watching their lines and their driving styles, they definitely really have the hard tire down really well. And I'm wondering maybe if there might be an adjustment period there, in terms of, using the grip, using the front tires a little bit more, kind of upping their roll speed. It might just be something to watch out for. I know, drivers like Ryan talk a lot about that. So yeah, I think definitely there shouldn't be too long of an adjustment period. But I think they're going to have to work really hard to kind of catch up to those top senior guys.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy got a taste of senior, ran the Sunshine State Regional event at Homestead, so he's already got some laps under it. Nearly won on day one, came down to the last corner and just flat out blew it a little bit under pressure. DeTulio was able to, he was blocking, just went a little bit wide, got crossed over, and DeTulio was able to get him. Both two young guys. And then the second day, drove through the field, kind of got nerfed a little bit in the pre-final, and had to drive forward and ended up getting onto the box again. So a couple of podiums for his first outing, which is good. And I think what helps both of them is they've got, they both have experience, in running the soft tire before it switched to the medium, in the recent year. And obviously in Jeremy's case, running some rock races this year, which runs still a soft tire all the way through. So we'll see. Like you said, I mean, for some of them, it's not a seamless transition. Again, Thomas Annunziata is a good example who, came on late. Nate Cicero, came on late. Guys that kind of took a little bit and then really got going. And then on the opposite side, you have, Connor Zilish started really strong. Alex Stanfield started really, really strong. Max Opolsky started really, really strong. So you never know really how they fare until they get in. But I think the general consensus is they'll be good. One other kid I think that's going to be a sleeper and was kind of a sleeper through junior this year was Justin Ataconis. And he's done a lot of local senior races and he's been really, really quick. And wasn't really a big force, this year. I think he was probably a little bit on the on the conservative side when it came to racecraft, which would be my only concern with him because the speed's there for him. And I know Mike Doty Racing knows how to craft really good drivers and coach them to be really, really fast. But New York-based kid, really quick. And I don't know. Some guys there's like a different level, I guess, of aggression in junior. Junior seems more like impatience and senior seems more like just properly timed like aggression. And I think Justin maybe wouldn't always win out against some of the other impatient juniors that would just instantly pass right back and block for third and low line on lap 2 and let the leader get away. That happens in a lot of junior races. You don't see that as much in senior. But then at the same time, like you guys mentioned with Nate, the senior aggression's still very much there and very intense in a slightly different way, sometimes. But both guys could be really good. Again, we know Aiden Ingrata is probably going to end up going up, or at least we think. Frankie Mossman moved up just like Jack Jeffers for the final couple events of the year and was really good. I think better than a lot of people probably thought he would be because he had a really good end to SKUSA Summerfest in 2020. He drove from last up to fourth in one of the junior main events, I think the final one on the weekend under Nash. Bounced around on a few different programs this year, and then back onto the soft tire, which he hadn't driven in a couple seasons, and was up front in Rock Vegas or close to it. And then, dude, like big time jump up. I don't think if you were to talk about anyone unpredictable or no one would have thought would have been as good as he was, besides maybe his own camp at Supernats, it would have been Frankie Mossman for being top 3 in most of his heats and then top 10 in the final. I mean, that's pretty impressive for senior race number 2. So another guy to watch for next year, and kind of a weird example of some kids that don't really set the world on fire in junior for whatever reason, but end up looking like they're going to be really, really hot in senior. Obviously, you guys have looked, been through the ranks of senior. We've been through the pushback bumpers. We've talked about everything here tonight. What are some closing thoughts you have for juniors, whether they're going into senior or going into shifter? Because we asked our drivers last week. You guys are coaching a lot of those guys. Some of them you'll end up coaching this year of kids making that transition, up into whether it's into shifter or into senior. So I want to toss it around the room a little bit. Sonny, let's start with you. What are some of the things you kind of tell a driver when they're going up, or any advice you'd have for kids going up to those classes?
I would think just to remain coachable. A lot of drivers that come out of junior as champions or winners come into senior, and they kind of have this chip on their shoulder that they're going to show up and they're going to wax everyone. And, it's okay to have that confidence, but at the same time, you need to remain coachable, because hands down, it's going to be harder. And when maybe you're not having the best opening weekend, or, halfway through the season, you're in a slump, you can't have this mindset that, oh, I've won junior, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to do it my way, right? You need to still listen to people, because we can all get better. And mainly, it's just remain coachable as you go up and just try to settle in, try to race everyone respectfully. The last thing any of these senior guys want to see is a fast junior come up, start blowing everyone out of the way, start getting cocky. It just doesn't ever really work out.
Artie, what about yourself?
For the junior kids coming up, I think obviously the aggression is one thing that's very different from junior to senior, because you usually go from bullying to getting bullied. But yeah, I think one thing that a lot of drivers coming up, they need to work on their alertness of what's going on, and that I feel like that's more prevalent in senior, of being alert. Whether it's on a quick quality lap and you need to slow down and you get in someone's way, or just racecraft and understanding who you're around and how they race, because having a better understanding of how the guys around you race is only going to make your racing better.
And Luke, final thoughts there for juniors and maybe that are going up that these guys haven't touched on?
Yeah, maybe I'll give some hard advice. The big thing for me is if you really want to be either a top level senior driver or a professional race car driver, treat it like a real sport. Because everyone at the top is working really hard, right? And I see a lot of kids coming up, or just drivers in general, that kind of they kind of treat it like a hobby, and then they expect their results to just naturally come good, right? And I just don't think it's the case. You really need to put in the time, whether it's on or off the track, and remain coachable, and just really think about what your weaknesses are. Ryan came out with a video this year about what are my weaknesses, what am I working on, right? And he's the best X30 driver we've seen probably ever. And I think a lot of kids really need to take, if they want the results, especially at the senior level, they just kind of need to up their intensity a little bit. I had this talk with Nate at one point. I'm like, dude, I can't be trying harder than you in a practice session. You gotta keep digging. And I think that goes to a lot of drivers moving up. They're kids, they're going through a lot of stuff, 14, 15, 16 years old. But just try your hardest every time you get on the track, and really reflect on where your strengths and weaknesses are. And that can really set you apart. I'm sure those guys that we talked about earlier, they do all of that. So that's my advice. That's my soap opera.
No, it's good. I mean, like you said with Ryan, or really with any of the greats, they are constantly working on themselves, and they're focused. Sonny, you mentioned off air here before this, when you were working with Jake, and you go back to the hotel room in Vegas, and after qualifying on pole at the Supernats out of 80 plus drivers, he's watching his pole lap again, trying to look for the mistakes that he made and how he could have gone quicker. Instead of, oh, I got pole, let's go down, and he's old enough to gamble. He'd go gamble. He could have gone and drank, or he could have gone and partied, or hung out with friends, or chased girls, or whatever. The guy went back and was focused and wanting to win that race. And that's the best guys. It's it's what's the old saying? It's hard work beats talent, every time. you don't have to be the most naturally gifted guy. And most of the time, the most naturally gifted guy doesn't win the race. It's the guy that worked the hardest.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. Luke made a solid point about that with the intensity. When you get up to senior, there's no more faking it, really. You got to be 100% if you want to do it. It's really easy for a lot of people, I think, to look at certain drivers' success. That's the best team, or this is the fastest engine, or he's on the best go-kart. But all of these drivers that are winning, odds are they're working harder than all the guys that are making these excuses. It takes a full commitment. It's not just show up at the go-kart track, drive your go-kart, and head out. You have all these resources around, do your data every session, do your GoPro every session, do track walks, ask questions, learn about your go-kart, learn about how to set it up. I mean, make the most of it, because these guys that are beating you, that's what they're doing.
100%. Well, it's a good way to close out our segment here on all of our driver evaluations and what we got. We got a stacked year ahead. Luckily we're not losing really many of our big name guys besides Connor, who's won a lot of races. I know we'll not get to maybe see Thomas Annunziata or Alex Stanfield as much in 2022, which is unfortunate. But, we've got a really good rookie class, as always, kind of coming up with a few guys that are going to be fun to watch, and are already in action this week at WKA Daytona with the 100cc stuff. Jeremy qualified really good. Paulie's down there racing. So, they're staying warm, and, here we are in less than 6 days, and we'll be on track testing at Homestead if they're there for that. And if not, we'll be racing in a week and a half. So super interesting, interesting comments you guys got. I'm sure the viewers liked it. I know I learned a little bit every time we bring more guys on this show. Before we sign off, though, folks, there was a lot of news that came out over the last week, and there was one bit of news that was not so fun to report, and I wasn't really sure how I wanted to go about it, to be honest. Back right before Christmas Eve, we got the news that we lost young Colby Dubato, who we lost to suicide right before Christmas. And Colby was 20 years old. He was racing the SKUSA Supernats just less than 3 weeks prior, and was racing all year, and he had friends at the racetrack. He was a super talented driver. He was not a shy kid. You could go and talk to him. He was a guy that I've talked to at the racetrack, a distant friend. I've played video games with him. I'd check in with him on each weekend. I knew him well, and he knew me, and he wasn't a stranger to anyone. He was never, never really a bad guy. And Colby had a lot of friends, on the surface. I think the thing that's the most sad about everything with Colby is how many friends he had and how little warning signs there were. And I want to encourage, the racetrack. If I want to give anything to take away from this for everyone watching at home, we're in an individual sport. It's competitive. And I know at times that we have a lot of trash talking that can go on, and we have a lot of ribbing and fun and everything like that. But and it's very easy, you become a cool kid at the racetrack when you get fast, and normally before you're fast, you're slow, and you want to be that kid, and you want to be able to, make the jokes back or anything. But we have a lot of kids that follow this show. I know we don't have as many that watch happy hours we do on some of our other content. But for any of the kids watching at home, I want you to understand that you never know what anyone's going through. And this can be a really tough sport. It's a tough enough sport as it is. If there's anything to take out of losing such an amazing soul and someone that, was a joy to be around at the racetrack, we can all be a little bit kinder, show a little bit more love. Don't be afraid to tell, your friends and your brothers and your sisters and your parents how much you love them. And for parents, be listening to your kids, and Colby's parents did. There's no bad part about this story that anyone did wrong. It's just a sad, sad time, and we miss Colby, and we miss his spirit at the racetrack. He's missed by so many. And the outpouring of support you can find in all of his social media channels. And to Colby and his family, we wish you nothing but the best. And we can't imagine what you guys are going through. We want to wish you all the love that we can here from everyone here at Kart Chaser. And we want to hope that, out of all of this, everybody watching, all of our supporters, all of Colby's supporters, and everyone in the karting community can just, as we go into 2022 and when we see you guys on the other side next year, can love a little bit more and maybe judge a little bit less. And I think we make the racetrack a little bit of a better place, and hopefully we can, find the next kid that may not be feeling like they're worth it, because you absolutely are. On that note, everybody, I do want to tell all of you that we love you guys so much, and we appreciate all the love that you give us. And we will see you guys when we come back next week with all of our other content and everything else. And we want to wish a farewell to a racer gone too soon.